Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This report is for April the 6th, and well, the excitement is starting. We came down on Friday to the 23% line, and now we've seemed to come to the realization that the Fed will buy anything that gets close to approximating a dip below it and start to push it above there. So that has become what I think the market is seeing as their threshold line. And as we ended Friday with a buy signal after the decline, futures just took off. Because now you have a support threshold. So that theoretically is the bottom of the market, despite whatever happens. So that's an interesting comfort. And then you build from there knowing that that's the baseline. So it doesn't matter what the economic models or anything else suggests, or however many people are not working or businesses not making money, that is the threshold, because the Fed can print unlimited amounts of money, and it does. It's a unique power. And as long as people buy into it, it still works. So from a NASDAQ standpoint, all the way back up to the 38%, so this potentially could break into new highs. That would be impressive. If we go back to the daily, though, I do want to point out, because we do have the rising steel, which presaged this, as well as the falling orange here. And when those separate in that kind of fashion, you tend to get small spikes. Last time it happened right over here, you had that big giant move up. We're reaching now, we have the orange below red, and potentially you could even see green crossover buy. And all this has been taking place within the rising gold. We had that first rise, which was very weak, and then it plateaued for a while. So this breakout, so to speak, really has to lift to the 50%, which may be crazy to talk about getting close to that 2780 number, but hey, stranger things have occurred. They're going to hype it on the news that they've had a reduction in the number of deaths, as if that's a thing that relates to anything. I don't know. They just have to look for an excuse as to why things are doing that. But I think it's pretty clear from what we're looking at, where they intervened late in the market yesterday, Friday, and then applied price higher. NASDAQ, like I said, was making a stronger move from the beginning, and it had actually crossed below and back up. And that's nice key, because I like to see those crossovers, because that really adds to the emphasis of it, because it's a transition of power within the algo. And this being a no steel reset, meaning we did not get this dip here below the red and then back crossing. And it's been quite a while since these crossings really matter as far as influence goes, just because they show who's in charge. From a euro standpoint, it was great that they were able to pump. We're back to this critical line again. Will the Fed defend the euro at this particular level as well, or do they have their hands full with the U.S. market? It's a tough one, because as they drive the U.S. market up, you're only going to drive euro down. It's not necessarily an inverse correlation, but the strength there, it's a reflection of how weak Europe is, and there's no disputing that. They have zero economic activity. And now, actually, they're going to start passing out masks to everyone in at least the Florence area. And now they're talking about everyone being registered, having to have a card that proves that you've had the virus. I mean, you're talking complete, I wouldn't even necessarily call it a fascist state, because that's just a basic totalitarian regimes. This is what's being bandied about. Or vaccines that have chips in them, so they'll be able to determine whether you've been vaccinated properly or not. So there's going to be some interesting things developing from this, and who knows what the broader implications of those are. But from an oil standpoint, we knew that it was just a matter of time before the U.S. could get their reserve setup going, and once they did, that was going to be the baseline for oil to make its turnaround. And I imagine the U.S. will just buy up as much as they can until they can breathe. They don't have any choice. Either that or it all falls apart. And even still, there's the idea of restarting things now is not going to be easy, because you'll have mismatches of supply and demand, without air travel being reconstituted. How are you going to support tourism industries and things like that? It's complicated. and I don't think that they necessarily know. I don't know that it's been tried to since like after World War II, restarting of an entire economy. This is a global economy restart, not just one nation. From a gold standpoint, yeah, we expect gold to continue its rise up. It's going to be staggered, I think, though, simply because there's going to be questions about whether or not there's going to be hyperinflation, not hyperinflation, blah, blah, blah. The never-ending saga. All right, well, this looks a lot different than normal, and that's because I've been doing, I spent almost 15 hours a day on making adjustments and everything to the PNT2 from a mathematical prospect. Of course, you're seeing a couple of things you're not used to seeing on here. The MBI indicator with the Power Mode 2. Power Mode 2 was always a derivative of the MBI indicator in that it was able to determine when you could get these kind of moves, which were sigma events, and you'd then be able to calculate based on if you could make the determination as to directional move. Well, when I added the additional algorithm that I was looking at, which ironically uses phi, the golden ratio, for a relationship to some of that, we get very effective signaling that comes through. But now what you're looking at on the chart here, though, is these cyan lines with the numbers, and this is based off of not just a DOC but shakeout configuration, and it's going to be tied into the Power Mo, and that I've created most of the calculations for what's necessary. It's just a matter now of putting it into the program. It will change dramatically things because, for instance, even if we fast forward after the variety of moves that we had over the weekend, it's going to change the paint too dramatically in the sense that instead of all the different colored candles, you're just going to see white and yellow, MBI and GAMs, that's it, eliminated. But what's great for us is that it will be able to eliminate some of these magenta candles where we can see that we're still within a consistent up move, and you'll notice that it's very different than what you would see from the MBI indicator as far as its relationship and how it's read. It's a bit more complex, but it's not going to be necessary because it's going to be in the code, and that will avoid having to explain the subtleties of it. For instance, on this rise, where you might see on the MBI indicator lots of different moves of the cross lines, even on the DOC, yes, you've been cyan under red, which is always a buy. It did produce a DOC spread for this little dip, but Power Mo, no, it considered that move not a sell signal. So that's interesting how effective that is in the way it works. And it was looking for sigma events right back here, and literally what that is for instance, it's just a matter of taking the range of the move. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, part of it, and then we use the average true range that's down here, and you could multiply by that, and that will give you the expectation. So some of these will suggest anywhere from a 2 to 5 sigma move, which is based on a standard deviation, and that's not really relevant to the discussion, but it's pretty darn accurate in getting close to, and this is something that is applied into the algorithms, and because people often say to me, well, when can I look for those positive extremes to retrace? And it's these sigma events that pop up in the Power Mode 2 that really will make the advancement for that, and being able to incorporate them within the programming will just make it easier. As you can see, we're plus 100 on this move so far, which pretty sizable when you think about it. It's fantastic stuff. So I'll be spending the rest of this week and however long it takes to make those adjustments to the program to incorporate all this. But I think it's going to make within the 5K a much more exacting configuration as to which longs we expect to be of duration versus ones that don't have a DOC reset from the steel, which do indicate, like these ones that we see over here, these are expected to be modest moves where you would expect to have to transition quickly on a changeover. So it's interesting because it's a very different from that approach of what the Pink 2 is doing now, which is buying and expecting a set stop and then just following it all the way. In this case, it's going to be much more of a dynamic back and forth where it accepts the limitations of certain signals and recognizes that not every run is going to be of super duration. And instead of just hoping to catch, we know precisely how to catch them. So we're going to be very excited to explore that, and also in the higher time frames, because I think even for MBI Opus 2 PowerMo programs, like even just moving to a 25,000 and potentially even a 10,000 for those automated programs, which will add more trades, more capabilities, and more profits. That's always the end result. And obviously having a 5K that is precise makes a huge difference, because I think the closer you can get to time at the actual trades without getting so close that you lose perspective really makes for fun trading. So that's the plan. We're going to keep going with it as the market turns, so to speak. We will certainly put up any additional charts on the Skype chat, and as these are developed, I will get them out. As always, trade well. We'll talk to you later.